can help transform invisible suffering into visible and meaningful expression. The case of Linda illustrates how family wounds, emotional exclusion, invisible loyalties, and unresolved tensions may continue to affect psychological functioning over time. Within the Artdonnance framework, art becomes a safe container where emotional experience can emerge progressively, without judgment or imposed interpretation. Throughout this presentation, I will explain the therapeutic objectives of the workshop, the clinical posture adopted during the process, the symbolic role of artistic creation, and the emotional reconstruction pathway supported through artistic mediation. This presentation also reflects a fundamental principle of Artdonnance that healing does not necessarily begin with words, but sometimes with the simple act of creating, tracing, expressing, and reconnecting with one's inner world. Thank you for your attention, and I hope this presentation will offer meaningful insight into the therapeutic dimensions of art-based emotional support. Hello everyone. Today I will present Linda's case through the Artdonnance Level 1 framework. This case explores invisible emotional wounds and unresolved family dynamics. It shows how emotional pain can silently affect identity, emotional balance, and the sense of belonging across generations. Clinical context. Linda grew up in an emotionally fragile family environment. She experienced emotional distance, silence, and a constant need to adapt herself. Over time, she felt emotionally unseen and unrecognized. These experiences progressively shaped her self-image and relationships. The triggering event appeared after a full family conflict related to inheritance and unequal emotional treatment. Linda became emotional support for a sick parent, which increased her emotional burden. She experienced sadness, emotional exhaustion, injustice, rejection, and affective loss. From transgenerational perspective, Linda's stories reveal other emotional wounds already present in the family lineage. We can observe silence around emotions, hidden suffering, favoritism, and invisible loyalties. These unresolved dynamics continued unconsciously across generations. Main emotional wounds. Several emotional wounds appeared clearly in Linda's functioning. The main wounds are injustice, rejection, emotional abandonment, and the chronic hypervigilance. She also had difficulty setting emotional boundaries, which create constant inner tension and exhaustion. The Artdonnance Level 1 model is based on 4 therapeutic pillars: listening, creation, momentum, and peace. This pillar guide the person through emotional recognition, symbolic expression, transformation, and inner reintegration. Pillar 1. Listening. The first therapeutic step in listening without judgment. The practitioner offers emotional validation, safety, grounding, and active listening. For Linda, this became an important experience of emotional connection. Pillar 2. Creation. Linda used drawing, writing, and colors to express emotions that were difficult to verbalize. Through artistic expression, hidden emotion became visible and emotionally safer to approach. Pillar 3. Momentum. This stage focuses on transformation and movement. Linda progressively reconstructed her identity and regained emotional legitimacy. She also developed heal their emotional boundaries and emotional positioning. Pillar 4, peace. The final pillar focuses on emotional integration and inner peace. Linda used breathing rituals, reflective journaling, and symbolic repair phrases. These practices helped her create a calmer and more secure inner space. This case demonstrates how invisible family wounds can deeply affect identity, construction, and emotional functioning. Artdonnance helps transform silent suffering into conscious emotional expression and reconstruction. Learning objectives, level 1. The objectives here are to identify invisible emotional wounds, understand transgenerational repetition, and accompany symbolic emotional expression. It's also important to create adapted creative prescriptions within a safe therapeutic framework. The role of Artdonnance practitioner. The practitioner provides deep presence, emotional neutrality, kindness, and active listening. The role is also to maintain a secure framework while respecting the person's right and autonomy. To conclude, Linda's story reminds us that invisible emotional wounds can shape an entire life when they remain unrecognized. Artdonnance transforms silent suffering into emotional reconstruction, awareness, and inner peace. Je vous remercie d'avoir écouté cette brève introduction du cas de Linda. Thank you for listening to this brief introduction to Linda case. Je voudrais vous expliquer au tout départ pour que vous puissiez comprendre de façon plus concrète, plus imagée la situation de Linda. C'est pour ça que je vais prendre la parole un moment, vous expliquer un petit peu son cas et on passera ensuite au cas le plus opérationnel qui était la délivrance de l'ordonnance de Linda. First, I would like to explain things so that you can understand Linda's situation in a more concrete and visual way. That is why I'm going to speak for a moment and explain her case a little, and then we will move on to the more operational part, which was the delivery of Linda's Artdonnance prescription. Alors, le cas de Linda, Linda, c'est une personne qui a gardé depuis des années, depuis sa tendre enfance, des blessures familiales. Elle est issue d'une mère matriarcale, d'un père qui n'a jamais été présent dans les moments les plus importants de sa vie, à savoir ses études, l'obtention de ses études, aussi lors de son mariage, de sa vie de famille, la conception de ses enfants, l'obtention de ses diplômes professionnels, sa carrière professionnelle. Donc, il a toujours été en mode effacé parce que justement, cette mère matriarcale prenait toujours le dessus et qui semblait avoir un favoritisme très important pour ses frères. So, Linda's case is the story of a person who has carried family wounds for many years. Since early childhood, she comes from a matriarchal mother and a father who was never present during the most important moments of her life, such as her education, the completion of her studies, her marriage, her family life, the birth of her children, the achievement of her professional diplomas, and her professional career. He always remained withdrawn because this matriarchal mother constantly took control and seemed to show a very strong favoritism toward one. Ici, dans notre société algérienne et la société musulmane, nous sommes portés sur le respect des parents, quelle que soit la nature conflictuelle ou affective avec eux. Nous sommes portés au silence aussi, qui est une très grande marque de respect vis-à-vis d'eux. C'est pour cela que pour Linda, il était très difficile pour elle de se manifester. Here, in our Algerian society and in Muslim society, we are deeply attached to respecting our parents regardless of the emotional or conflictual nature of the relationship with them. We are also guided by a profound form of respect and consideration toward parents. That is why, for Linda, it was very difficult for her. Elle ne pouvait pas s'exprimer à côté d'une mère qui prenait toujours le dessus, qui monopolisait les discussions et même les émotions. She could not express herself beside a mother who always took control, monopolizing both the conversation and even the emotions. Linda, peu à peu, commençait à développer, à partir de l'âge du jeune adulte, à développer cliniquement sur le plan médical une thyroïdite auto-immune, une maladie auto-immune. Et on dit souvent que les maladies auto-immunes sont très rapportées au choc émotionnel ou alors aux tensions existentielles ou alors une douleur de l'âme. Little by little, from young adulthood onward, Linda began to clinically develop, from a medical perspective, an autoimmune thyroiditis, an autoimmune disease. It's often said that autoimmune diseases are strongly linked to emotional shocks, existential tensions, or even a deep pain of the soul. Linda, jusque-là, a somatisé. Sa douleur émotionnelle, sa douleur de l'âme, l'a somatisée dans son corps. Up that point, Linda had somatized her emotional pain, her soul suffering into her body. Linda a consulté, a commencé par une consultation médicale, parce que c'est le corps qui avait parlé en premier. C'était la douleur corporelle. Donc elle a consulté chez un spécialiste, elle a été traitée, sans pour autant avoir traité le fond qui était cette douleur intérieure ancrée depuis l'enfance. Linda sought medical consultation first because it was the body that spoke before anything else. It was physical pain, so she consulted a specialist and received treatment without, however, addressing the root cause, which was this deeply rooted inner pain. Linda, au fur et à mesure qu'elle ressentait le besoin de s'exprimer, d'extérioriser son mal-être intérieur, elle a commencé par des séances de psychothérapie. Vous voyez que la jonction entre la médecine, la psychothérapie et l'art-thérapie vont se joindre petit à petit. As Linda gradually felt the need to express and externalize her inner distress, she began psychotherapy sessions. You can see that the connection between medicine, psychotherapy, and art therapy will gradually come together. Donc, elle a commencé par des séances de psychothérapie, à savoir des séances de psychanalyse, des séances aussi de ce qu'on appelle l'EMDR, l'Eye Movement Desensibilization Processing. Elle a commencé à atténuer ces zones traumatiques à partir de cette prise en charge. Cependant, elle avait remarqué que ça ne lui suffisait pas. So, she began psychotherapy sessions, including psychoanalysis sessions as well as EMDR, eye movement desensitization and processing. She started to reduce the impact of her traumatic areas through this therapeutic support. However, she noticed that it was not enough for her. Elle voulait encore aller plus loin. Elle voulait encore extérioriser. Et c'est à partir de là que la consultation artistique est venue s'imposer à elle. She wanted to go even further. She wanted to externalize even more. And it was from that point that artistic consultation naturally came to her. Linda est venue à moi. Linda s'est expliquée à moi après avoir eu un événement douloureux. C'est l'événement que je vous ai cité sur la communication. L'annonce verbale, téléphonique, qui est impersonnelle, de presque une destitution de la famille. Cette destitution de l'héritage était une destitution aussi émotionnelle qui l'avait profondément choqué. Et jusqu'à l'heure actuelle, on continue d'y travailler, mais beaucoup de choses ont évolué, vous allez le voir. Linda came to me. She opened up to me after experiencing a painful event. It's the event emotional in the communication, a verbal phone-based announcement, which was impersonal, almost like a family disinheritance. This loss of inheritance was also an emotional dispossession that deeply shocked her. And to this day, we are still working on it. But many things have evolved, as you will see. Comme pour une consultation médicale, lorsque le patient vient chez nous avec ses maux du corps, comme elle est venue consulter pour son problème de thyroïde, elle est venue consulter aussi pour la consultation de l'âme, la consultation artistique. On ne peut pas guérir le corps sans guérir l'âme. Just like in a medical consultation, when a patient comes to us with physical ailments, as she did for her thyroid issue, she also came seeking a consultation for the soul, an artistic consultation. The body cannot be healed without healing the soul. À présent, je vais partager avec vous la communication sur la deuxième étape. Une fois que vous avez identifié le problème de Linda, vous allez voir maintenant la ligne de conduite. Mais avant, je vais encore vous retracer brièvement ce qui a déclenché cette consultation. Now, I'm going to share with you the communication on the second step. Once you have identified Linda's problem, you will now see the course of action. But first, I will briefly outline again what triggered this consultation. Linda, au fur et à mesure, elle a reçu ce coup de fil, le coup de fil fatidique, téléphonique, lui disant qu'elle devait se rendre chez un notaire pour la distribution des biens. Chez nous, en islam, il y a une équité aussi dans la distribution des biens. Il y a des partages, que ce soit pour la maman, pour les enfants, il y a un partage de biens qui est dans une équité islamique. Ce partage n'a pas eu lieu. Linda s'est retrouvée défavorisée face à une maman matriarcale qui avait pris toutes les décisions et qui avait favorisé ses frères. Linda n'a jamais demandé à avoir un héritage palpable, un héritage on va dire en termes de biens matériels. Elle voulait un héritage émotionnel, un héritage affectif qu'on lui avait amputé. Over time, Linda received that faithful phone call, telling her telling her she had to go to a notary for the distribution of assets. In our Islamic context, there is also fairness in the distribution of inheritance, with defined shares for the mother and the children in accordance with Islamic equity. However, this distribution did not take place properly. Linda found herself as a disadvantage in front of a matriarchal mother who had made all the decision and who had favored her sons. Linda never truly asked for a tangible inheritance in terms of material possessions. What we wanted was an emotional inheritance, an affective legacy, which had been taken away from her. Je partage maintenant avec vous la communication sur la délivrance de l'ordonnance suite à ce cas clinique qui est très sensible. I'm now sharing with you the communication regarding the delivery of the prescription following this very sensitive clinical case. The Artdonnance process proposed for Linda is part of a therapeutic support approach designed to facilitate the symbolic expression of deeply rooted emotional experience through artistic meditation. In this clinical context, the objective was not to create an aesthetic artwork, not to interpret the drawing as psychological test, but rather to offer a safe and containing space where emotional family tension and transgenerational wounds could gradually take shape. The artistic prescription functioned as a therapeutic container allowing the release of emotion that had been carried internally for a long time, the transformation of visible suffering into symbolic traces, the expression of experience that were difficult to verbalize, and the progressive restoration of a more legitimate psychological place within the family narrative. During the session, Linda explored them related to family bloom, emotional transmission, exclusion and not reconnection, invisible loyalties, and the need for psychological separation from painful family dynamics. Deep emotional impact, rejection feelings, emotional insecurity, fragile self-worth, internalized suffering, long-term emotional wounds. The triggering event, unequal inheritance, symbolic exclusion, emotional rupture, reactivation old wound, family conflict intensification. Beyond material loss, emotional injustice, need for recognition, search for legitimacy, feeling unseen, emotional inequality. Fathers' declining health, feel of loss, emotional confusion, pain and helpless, psychological overboard, core psychological wound, lack from emotional place, need for belonging, identify fragility, emotional abandonment, invisible child syndrome, transgenerational dimension, family repetition, invisible loyalties, emotional transmission, unresolved family wounds, intergenerational silence, hidden family mechanism, favoritism, emotional domination, exclusion dynamics, silence normalization, identify erasure. Intertwined emotional wounds, rejection, injustice, abandonment, emotional insecurity, and visibility. Artdonnance therapeutic process. Safe therapeutic space, emotional containment, artistic externalization, symbolic expression, progressive awareness. Artistic prescription. Role of the artwork, emotional release, visualization of inner conflict, symbolic processing, psychological distancing, identify reconstruction. Therapist ethical position, not interpretive posture, active listening, emotional accompaniment, facilitating meaning emergence, respect for patient subjectivity. Therapeutic outcomes, emotional awareness, inner regulation, boundary restoration, self-reconnection, empowerment process. Importance of training in artistic prescription. Clinical observation skills, ethical therapeutic practice, understanding symbolic process, emotional regulation knowledge, transgenerational awareness. Final reflection. Making the invisible visible, transforming silent suffering, art as therapeutic bridge, from pain to reconstruction, healing through symbolic creation. That is the Artdonnance Process Explanation Transgenerational Family Art Therapy Workshop, Linda Case. Je vous laisse regarder cette ordonnance thérapeutique appelée Artdonnance. C'est une prescription que j'avais donnée à Linda concernant son cas. Je vous enverrai bien sûr cette ordonnance en fichier PDF pour que vous puissiez la lire tranquillement et comprendre la relation de cause à effet par rapport à la souffrance intérieure de Linda et la nécessité de la délivrance de cette ordonnance. I invite you to take a look at this therapeutic prescription called an Artdonnance. It is a prescription I gave to Linda regarding Santa. Of course, I will send you this prescription as a PDF file so that you can read it calmly and understand the cause and effect relationship in relation to Linda's inner suffering and the need for release. The Artdonnance process, I repeat, proposed for Linda is part of a therapeutic support approach designed to facilitate the symbolic expression of deeply rooted emotional experiences through artistic meditation. Voici, après avoir entamé une consultation artistique chez Linda, avoir compris la problématique, et avoir délivré une ordonnance pour pallier à la douleur, en plus de la prise en charge psychologique et la prise en charge médicale dont elle disposait, je lui ai délivré cette ordonnance. Et à partir de là, elle a commencé ses premiers travaux. Voici donc les premiers dessins. Rappelez-vous, en art-thérapie, nous ne sommes pas dans l'interprétation des dessins. Ce n'est pas de la psychanalyse, mais je voudrais vous donner une idée globale sur ces travaux. After initiating an artistic consultation with Linda, understanding the problem, and providing a prescription to address the pain, in addition to the psychological and medical care she was already receiving, I gave her this prescription. And from that point on, she began her first work. Here are, therefore, the first drawing. Remember that in art therapy, we are not interpreting drawings. This is not psychanalysis, but I would like to give you a general idea of this work. The drawings reveal an inner movement oscillating between attachment and rupture, pain and reconstruction, silence and expression. Within the Artdonnance framework, the repeated lines, spirals, pathway, and ruptures are not interpreted as fixed symbols, but are welcomed and spontaneous manifestation of the emotional and psychological process emerging during the creative act. The therapeutic posture remains no interpretative. The role of the therapist is not to impose meaning onto the artwork, but to accompany the patient in the emergence of personal meaning. Creative process. Through the workshop, the artistic mediation enabled emotional externalization in a contained and safe environment, symbolic processing of traumatic experience, distancing from overwhelming emotional burdens, and the beginning of an identity reconstruction process. The first one, the second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one. Linda was also able to connect a part of her artistic expression to a long-standing experience of injustice, exclusion, and lack of recognition within the family system, particularly rectified by the succession conflict and the imbalance in family relationships. In this perspective, the act of creation becomes a tool for emotional regulation, a space for symbolic transformation, a support for psychological differentiation, and pathway toward inner reconstruction and self-reappropriation. Je vous invite à regarder ce dernier dessin. Ce dessin qui est très très expressif, qui est rattaché à un fil que vous voyez ici. Nous ne sommes pas dans l'interprétation, mais la patiente a tenu à interpréter elle-même son dessin. Et c'est le principe même de l'art-thérapie, exorciser son émotion et pouvoir la confier aux autres. I invite you to look at this final drawing, a very expressive drawing that is connected to a thread that you can see her. We are not in an interpretation process, but the patient herself should interpret her own drawing. And this is the very principle of art therapy, to externalize one's emotion and be able to share them with others. Linda m'avait dessiné ce dessin lors d'une séance d'art-thérapie. Et elle tenait à m'expliquer cet œil qui était la domination matriarcale de sa maman. Ce fil conducteur qui rattachait à une zone presque intime, la zone, on va dire, de l'utérus. Elle a parlé d'utérus. C'est une zone profonde de féminité où la domination a été atteinte jusqu'au-là. Linda drew this image during an art therapy session. She insisted on explaining this eye, which represented the matriarchal dominance of her mother. The guiding thread connected to an almost intimate area. The womb, as she described it, a deep zone of femininity, where this domination had been felt and impacted. Linda, en faisant ce dessin, a réalisé à quel point elle était sous l'emprise de cette domination, à quel point cette relation qui était censée être affective d'utérus à utérus, sa maman l'a portée et elle-même a porté des enfants, voulait qu'il y ait une affection transgénérationnelle. Elle a relaté cette coupure dont la maman a été l'instigatrice, cette coupure relationnelle entre les deux utérus. By making this drawing, Linda realized how much she had been under the influence of this domination and how this relationship, which was supposed to be an affective bond from womb to womb, carried a transgenerational dimension as her mother had carried her and she herself had carried children, creating a desire for an intergenerational emotion connection. She described this rupture initiated by her mother as a relation break between the two wombs. Après avoir réalisé ce dessin, Linda a fait une confession, a réalisé quelque chose intérieurement parlant et a décidé de me le confier verbalement. Elle m'a dit, je ne sais pas pourquoi, ce fil noir, autant il est de rupture, mais il y a aussi ce fil rouge qui me rattache à mon père. Peut-être est-ce un pardon quelque part de ma part pour lui. After completing this drawing, Linda made a confession, realized some things internally, and decided to share it with me verbally. She told me, I don't know why, this black thread that connects me to my father. Maybe it is in a way my forgiveness toward him. After completing this drawing, Linda made a confession, realized something internally, and decided to share it with me verbally. She told me, I don't know why, this black thread represents rupture, but there is also this red thread that connects me to my father. Maybe is, in a way, my forgiveness toward him. Forgiveness toward her father. Après avoir réalisé ce dessin, peu de temps après, je vous parlerai de moins d'une semaine, elle a reçu un deuxième appel. Si vous vous rappelez, le premier appel qui avait déclenché toutes ces nécessités de thérapie transgénérationnelle, c'était le coup de fil du partage des biens de façon inéquitable. Maintenant, elle a reçu un deuxième appel. Shortly after completing this drawing, within less than a week, she received a second phone call. If you remember, the first call that triggered all this need for transgenerational therapy was the announcement of the unfair distribution of assets. Now she received a second call. I repeat, shortly after completing this drawing, within less than a week, she received a second phone call. If you remember the first call that triggered all this need for transgenerational therapy was the announcement of the unfair distribution of assets. Now she received a second call. A second call. Elle a reçu un deuxième appel. Ce deuxième appel avait mentionné que son père était décédé. She received a second phone call. The second call informed her that her father had passed away. She received a second phone call. The second call informed her that her father has passed away. Son papa était décédé. Imaginez si elle n'avait pas été préparée à ce second appel. Grâce à l'art-thérapie, elle avait relaté ses sentiments vis-à-vis de sa maman et vis-à-vis de son papa. Elle avait pardonné intérieurement à son papa. Elle était, on va dire, on ne peut plus prête pour l'annonce de cette mauvaise nouvelle. Her father had passed away. Imagine if she had not been prepared for this second call. Thanks to art therapy, she had already expressed her feelings toward both her mother and her father. She had internally forgiven her father. She was, so to speak, a little more prepared for the announcement of this tragic news. Linda, après avoir reçu la mauvaise nouvelle du décès de son père, le choc était là, mais le pardon intérieur aussi était là. Donc elle a pu vivre avec sérénité les obsèques de son père. After receiving the tragic news of her father's death, the shock was still present, but so was her inner forgiveness. As a result, she was able to experience her father's funeral with a sense of serenity. Linda, après avoir externalisé sa douleur intérieure, elle pouvait affronter le jour de l'enterrement, le jour du regroupement de toute la famille. Elle pouvait affronter le regard de sa maman matriarcale. Elle pouvait affronter le regard de ses frères. Et aussi, elle pouvait pardonner à son père qui était là, immobile, inerte. After externalizing her inner pain, Linda was able to face the day of the burial, the day when the whole family gathered. She was able to face the gaze of her matriarchal mother, the gaze of her brothers, and she was also able to forgive her father, who was there, motionless and lifeless. Linda était sereine pour affronter cette nouvelle douleur qui allait se proposer à elle. C'est pour ça que en médecine, on parle de prémédication. On prémédique les patients avant qu'ils s'engagent dans des investigations douloureuses ou dans d'autres euh, trajectoire clinique douloureux. Nous, en art-thérapie aussi, on peut parler euh, d'une pré-thérapie, par l'art pour euh, euh, aider le patient à affronter l'avenir. Linda was calm enough to face this new wave of pain that was coming toward her. That is why in medicine we speak of premedication. Patients are premedicated before undergoing painful investigation or other difficult clinical procedures. In art therapy as well, we can speak of a pre-therapy, an art-based preparation that helps the patient face what lies ahead. In art therapy as well, we can speak of a pre-therapy, an art-based preparation that helps the patient face what lies ahead. Je vous ai retracé ici toute la chronologie des dessins, toute la chronologie de la consultation artistique de Linda dans ce format image pour que vous puissiez avoir une première feuille de route sur le process d'ordonnance. Comment peut-on aider nos patients en amont de l'incident ou en aval de l'incident traumatique ou autre incident? I have outlined her the full chronology of Linda's drawing and the entire timeline of her artistic consultation in this visual format, so that you can have an initial roadmap of the prescription process, how we can help our patient upstream of an incident or downstream of a traumatic incident or any other event. I have outlined here the full chronology of Linda's drawing and the entire timeline of her artistic consultation in this visual format, so that you can have an initial roadmap of the prescription process, how we can help our patients upstream of an incident or downstream of a traumatic incident or any other event. Le cas de Linda est un cas parmi d'autres cas qui ont été intégrés au concept d'ordonnance. Il y a eu des cas dans le cadre d'oncologie, par exemple, comme je suis responsable d'une cellule d'oncologie. Il y a eu d'autres cas aussi pour les enfants. Donc, n'hésitons pas à retracer tous ces cas. N'hésitons pas à donner le meilleur de nous-mêmes en art-thérapie pour pallier à la douleur, autant mentale que physique, morale aussi, mais une douleur de l'âme. L'art-thérapie se joint à la psychothérapie. Elle se joint au traitement médicamenteux. C'est un allié euh, indissociable pour aider le patient dans sa traversée intérieure. The case of Linda is one among many cases that have been integrated into the concept of Artdonnance. There have been cases in oncology, for example, as I'm responsible for an oncology unit, as well as other cases involving children. So let us not hesitate to retrace all these cases, and let us to hesitate to give the very best of ourselves in art therapy to alleviate pain, whether mental, physical, or moral, but also the pain of the soul. Art therapy joins psychotherapy. It also complements pharmacological treatment. It is an inseparable ally in helping the patient through their inner journey. I repeat, the case of Linda is one among many cases that have been integrated into the concept of Artdonnance. There have been cases in oncology, for example, as I'm responsible for an oncology unit, as well as other cases involving children. So let us not hesitate to retrace all these cases and let us not hesitate to give the very best of ourselves in art therapy to alleviate pain, whether mental, physical, or moral, but also the pain of the soul. Art therapy joins psychotherapy. It also complements pharmacological treatment. It's an inseparable ally in helping the patient through her inner journey. Je vous remercie vraiment pour votre patience. Euh, je voudrais juste vous dire, je voudrais juste m'excuser par rapport à la langue. Peut-être que j'ai mal prononcé certains mots ou plusieurs mots, mais je vous enverrai toute cette communication. Je partagerai avec vous toutes les ordonnances de ce premier cas que j'ai voulu diffuser avec vous, un cas concret, un cas palpable et aussi sensible dans cette thématique. Thank you very much for your patience. I would like just to say, I would also like to apologize regarding the language. Perhaps I mispronounced some words or several terms, but I will send you all this communication. I will share with you all the prescriptions from this first case that I wanted to present to you. A concrete case, a tangible and also sensitive case within this them. Ce que je vous ai présenté tout à l'heure, je vous le reprends maintenant. Donc, gardez dans cette communication les mots-clés que voici. Je vous ai regroupé slide par slide les mots-clés pour introduire le concept d'ordonnance, pour le contexte clinique, pour la position de la famille, pour l'impact émotionnel et aussi la ligne de conduite par rapport à Linda et son cas sensible. Was I presented to you earlier? I'm now summarizing again, so please keep in this communication the following keywords. I have grouped them slide by slide, keywords to introduce the concept of Artdonnance. The clinical context, the family positioning, the emotional impact, and also the course of action regarding Linda and her sensitive case. Je vous remercie vivement pour votre attention. N'hésitez pas à m'envoyer des questions auxquelles je vais répondre. Si c'est encore très préliminaire pour vous, je vous laisse le temps de revoir tranquillement son cas et on pourra bien sûr développer avec un grand plaisir. Je répondrai avec vos questions avec honneur et merci infiniment de m'avoir écouté. Merci Ananda de m'avoir proposer cette thématique auquel je voulais vraiment m'exprimer, un cas clinique concret qui m'a profondément touchée. Mais je suis heureuse parce que nous avons pu préparer cette personne aux éventuelles annonces ultérieures et elle était prête, que ce soit dans son corps et dans son âme. Thank you very much for your attention. Please feel free to send me any questions and I will be happy to answer them. If this is still very preliminary for you, I will give you time to carefully review her case and we can, of course, develop in further with great pleasure. I will respond to your question with honor and I sincerely thank you for listening to me. Thank you, Ananda, for proposing this theme, which I truly wanted to express. It's a concrete clinical case that deeply moved me. But I'm happy because we were able to prepare this person for possible future announcement, and she was ready both in her body and in her soul. I'm happy because we were able to prepare this person for possible future announcement, and she was ready both in her body and in her soul. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Narcia. Thank you for expertise for the case sharing, and it's profound and yes, give us inspiration. And also, we have the Q&A question. If anyone has the questions, please open your microphone and just ask. Or I say in the chat box, Georgie and ask a question. During this therapy process, how do you use verbal cues to guide your clients to discover the meaning within their artworks? So please, Dr. Nasia, maybe you can give the judges feedback. Hello, Nasia?
Yes.
Yes, please just check maybe the box, and you can maybe give them the feedback for the question.
1 minute.
Okay, thank you so much. If anybody who have any questions, yes, you can just raise your hand, and also maybe you can just type in the chat box, and also you can open your microphone and directly to speak with.
Alors voilà. Concernant donc les relances verbales. Alors je voudrais préciser déjà que je ne suis pas psychothérapeute, je suis médecin généraliste de formation, mais art thérapeute aussi. Euh, Dans le cadre de l'art-thérapie, je suis vraiment novice. Cela dit, le médecin aussi doit avoir de l'empathie, il doit avoir de la compassion, mais aussi un fil conducteur dans sa consultation médicale. J'ai adapté cette consultation médicale à la consultation artistique que j'ai créée par le concept Artdonnance et je vais vous expliquer. Euh, Thank you very much for your question. Euh, Concerning verbal prompts, I would like to clarify first that I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm a general practitioner by training, but also an art therapist. In the field of art therapy, I'm still very much a beginner. That said, a physician must have empathy and compassion, but also a guiding framework in medical consultation. I adapted this medical consultation model to the artistic consultation I created through the Artdonnance concept, and I will explain into you. Alors, comment ça s'est passé? D'abord, pour le respect du processus, comme pour le processus médical, il y a eu d'abord cette mise en confiance. Le patient est venu à moi. Il est venu à moi avec une douleur physique. Donc, il est venu chez le médecin avec une douleur physique. C'était son accentuation de la douleur de la thyroïde. Son bilan thyroïdien était perturbé. Euh, Voulant aller au-delà de la douleur du corps, j'ai commencé à investiguer l'âme. Euh, so, euh, alors, pendant le process thérapeutique, comment j'ai guidé le client verbalement pour qu'il découvre le sens contenu de son dessin? En fait, j'ai mis en confiance le patient, comme quand on le met, on lui explique ce qui va se passer lors de la délivrance de l'ordonnance, qui est très très important. Il faut expliquer à notre patient comment je perçois le moyen thérapeutique par l'art pour pallier à sa douleur, déjà en premier plan. Euh, During the therapeutic process, how I verbally guided the client to discover the meaning within their drawing was, first of all, by establishing trust with the patient, just as we do when explaining what will happen during the delivery of a medical prescription, which is very important. It is essential to explain to the patient how perceive the artistic therapeutic approach as a way to address their pain, first and foremost. Le patient, au fur et à mesure qu'il commençait à expliquer sa douleur, on a investigué le côté médical. J'ai trouvé qu'elle était prise en charge du côté de la psychothérapie et j'ai voulu investiguer encore plus pour sa douleur de là. Donc, comment j'ai pu guider ce client verbalement pour qu'il découvre le sens contenu de son dessin? Quelque part, il y a d'abord pour que le patient puisse élaborer son dessin, il faut des préliminaires. Il faut qu'il soit en condition méditative. D'abord, il y a une instigation à la méditation. On va retracer le chemin de sa douleur pour qu'il puisse s'exprimer. As the patient gradually began to explain her pain, we explored the medical aspect. I found that she was already being supported through psychotherapy, and I wanted to go even further in exploring her underlying emotional pain. So, regarding how I verbally guided the client to discover meaning in relation to her drawing, there is a first a prerequisite for the patient to be able to create their drawing. There must be an initial preparatory phase. The patient needs to be in meditative state. First, there is an invitation into a meditative process, which rests the path of their pain so that they can express themselves. Le patient, au fur et à mesure qu'il commence à se confier sur la douleur de l'âme, au fur et à mesure qu'il reçoit son ordonnance, qui est censée pallier à cette douleur, il va suivre le process de l'ordonnance, choisir son médium et proposer un des médiums qui puisse l'aider, un médium en fonction de son contexte, par exemple un médium qui est assez, on va dire, comme dans son cas, elle a choisi de simples crayons de couleur et un crayon. Donc quelque chose de très accessible à tout le monde. Et à partir de là, elle a retracé au fur et à mesure, on va dire, des 2 premières séances déjà, où elle avait verbalement identifié ses douleurs. Au bout de la 3e séance, elle a commencé par avoir l'envie de retracer cette douleur par le dessin. As the patient gradually begins to open up about the pain of the soul, as she receives her prescription intended to alleviate this pain, she follows the process outlined in the prescription. She chooses her medium and selects on that can support her expression, on that is adapted to her context. For example, in her case, she chose simple colored pencil and a pencil, something very accessible to everyone. From there, after the first 2 sessions in which she had already verbally identified her pain, by the 3rd session, she began to feel the desire to redress her suffering through drawing. Je ne sais pas si j'ai répondu à votre question, mais si vous avez encore une autre plus détaillée, n'hésitez pas. I'm not sure whether I fully answered your first question, but if you have another, more detailed one, please don't hesitate. Another question of honor: how to protect your client from second hurt in the art therapy? How to protect your client from second hurt in the art therapy? Yes. Alors, c'est une question qui est très très pertinente parce que c'est vrai, lorsque on est dans le cadre du retraçage de la douleur, il y a une hyperactivation de cette douleur et donc on va sensibiliser encore plus. Sachant que cette personne avait bénéficié de MDR, Eye Movement Desensibilization Processing, ça avait déjà désinhibé la douleur mentale. Donc, elle était apte déjà à prendre un autre chemin pour pallier à sa douleur. Ce qui m'a un peu facilité la tâche dans son cas-là. Il ne faut jamais lâcher dans la nature quelqu'un dont la douleur a été réactivée. C'est pour ça que la prescription d'ordonnance doit être graduelle et progressive. On va commencer par dénouer certains micro-traumatismes pour aller vers le plus grand. Euh, Honor, this is a very relevant question because it is true. When we are in the process of refracting pain, retracing pain, sorry, there can be an hyperactivation of that pain and therefore an increased sensitivity. In this case, since the patient had already benefited from EMDR, eye movement desensibilization processing, her psychological pain had already been partially desensitized. This meant she was already able to take another path to work through her suffering, which made the process somewhat easier in her case. One must never live in an open state someone whose pain has been reactivated. This is why the prescription in Artdonnance must be gradual and progressive. We begin by untangling certain micro-traumatisms before moving toward larger ones. Il faut toujours commencer progressivement. Lorsque la personne n'est pas prise en charge, la mise en confiance est très très importante pour le patient. Du moment qu'il se confie à vous, qu'il est dans l'optique de confidence, il peut, euh, vous devenez automatiquement une sorte de refuge chez lui. Quand vous devenez un refuge chez lui, il est habilité à se confier sans se heurter lui-même. It is always necessary to start gradually when the person is not already under care. Building trust is extremely important for the patient. From the moment they begin to confide in you and enter a state of openness, you automatically become, in a way, a refuge for them. And when you become this refuge, they are able to confide without harming themselves emotionally. Comme en médecine, nous regroupons tous les symptômes de la maladie. Pour arriver à un traitement, nous traitons symptôme par symptôme jusqu'à traiter la maladie. La même chose dans le concept d'ordonnance. Il y a une symptomatologie émotionnelle. Nous allons recadrer toutes les symptomatologies pour arriver au mal-être émotionnel. As in medicine, we gather all the symptoms of the illness in order to arrive at a treatment. In a medicine, we gather all the symptoms of the illness in order to arrive at a treatment. We address symptoms one by one until we reach and treat the disease itself. The same applies within the Artdonnance concept. There is an emotional symptomatology. We reframe and organize all these emotional symptoms in order to reach the underlying emotional distress. I repeat, as in medicine, we gather all the symptoms of the illness in order to arrive at a treatment. We address symptoms one by one until we reach and treat the disease itself. The same applies within the Artdonnance concept. There is an emotional symptomatology. We reframe and organize all these emotional symptoms in order to reach the underlying emotional distress. J'espère que j'ai pu répondre à vos questions. Je suis très honorée que vous me posiez ces questions-là qui sont très très pertinentes, très importantes. Je tiens vraiment à les développer de façon ultérieure au fur et à mesure. Je sais que c'est le concept d'ordonnance est novice chez vous. Il est tout nouveau. On a du mal un petit peu à concrétiser les choses et à voir les choses, mais j'espère au fur et à mesure vous allez comprendre l'intérêt de tout ça. Sachez que je vous ai retracé le cas de façon vraiment très globale, mais sachant que ce cas, pour ma part, ça fait plus de 2 ans que j'y travaille. I hope I was able to answer your question. I'm very honored that you are asking me these questions, which are extremely relevant and important. I truly intend to develop them further over time, step by step. I understand that the Artdonnance concept is still new to you, and it may be difficult at the moment to fully grasp and visualize it. But I hope that gradually you will come to understand its values. Please note that I have presented this case in a very global overview. However, for my part, I have been working on this case for over 2 years. Please note that I have presented this case in a very global overview. However, for my part, I have been working on this case for over 2 years. Les 2 années, il y a eu une lecture progressive. Au fur et à mesure, graduellement, la mise en confiance est encore plus posée. La patiente, au moment, nous sommes en art-thérapie, nous ne sommes pas en psychothérapie. Donc, au fur et à mesure, bien sûr, j'insiste sur l'intérêt d'avoir la prise en charge globale. C'est-à-dire que le patient est pris en charge cliniquement s'il a des maladies du corps, psychologiquement ou chez le psychiatre s'il a des maladies morales, mais la maladie de l'âme, elle est là pour se joindre aux autres prises en charge thérapeutiques et les aider. Donc déjà, le patient se sent plus rassuré. Lorsqu'on rassure l'âme, on peut rassurer le corps et l'esprit. Over the course of these 2 years, there has been a gradual and progressive reading of the case, with trust being established more deeply over time. The patient at this stage is in an art therapy process. We are not in psychotherapy. Of course, I emphasize the importance of a comprehensive, integrative approach. That is, the patient is medically supported for physical illness, psychologically for psychiatrically supported for mental and emotional conditions, while the dimension of the soul is addressed through art therapy, which comes to complement and support the other therapeutic intervention. In this way, the patient already feels more reassured. When the soul is reassured, the body and the mind can also be reassured. In this way, the patient already feels more reassured. When the soul is reassured, the body and the mind can also be reassured. Je suis vraiment très, très, très honorée et très ravie de vous lire. Merci, Madame Ananda, de m'attribuer ce temps pour m'expliquer. J'espère vraiment avoir l'occasion de vous expliquer encore plus en détail toute cette traçabilité. Et je vous enverrai tout le cas clinique retracé de façon plus détaillée pour que vous puissiez comprendre tout ce travail colossal dont on a fait preuve en équipe. I'm truly very, very honored and delighted to read you. Thank you, Ananda, for giving me the time to explain this. I truly hope to have the opportunity to explain in even greater detail all of this traceability. I will send you the full clinical case, retraced in a more detailed way, so that you can understand all the enormous work that has been carried out as a team. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Honor Georgie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Georgie, and the owner's question. Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. And also thank you for Dr. Narzia's feedback. And yes, it's really profound. And I think it's give more detailed information for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone have another questions? If you have questions, maybe you can click here, click in the chat box, or so, yes, open your microphone. If there are no questions, yeah, I will continue maybe end our sessions. Yes, we just wait for a few minutes, few seconds.
Je pense que, c'est un concept qui est très nouveau. On a du mal un petit peu à superposer la prise en charge clinicienne, thérapeutique par les médicaments ou psychothérapeutique à la prise en charge en art-thérapie. L'art-thérapie qui devient comme ça systématisée euh, et aussi de façon organisée, euh, personnalisée aussi. J'insiste que le concept d'ordonnance est une consultation artistique personnalisée et personnalisable. C'est ce qui va faire toute la différence. Je vous explique pourquoi. Euh, can I can, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Euh, je voudrais vous remercier vraiment d'avoir déjà compris de façon globale le concept d'ordonnance, mais que je vais développer après. Il faut savoir que comme pour la prise en charge médicale, la prise en charge de l'art-thérapie est importante, elle doit être personnalisée et personnalisable. C'est une prise en charge intégrée et intégrale. C'est-à-dire que comme pour le patient, lorsqu'il sort de sa consultation médicale avec sa prescription médicamenteuse pour pallier à la douleur des symptômes, il va sortir aussi avec une prescription artistique pour pallier à la douleur de l'âme, des émotions, une par une. Euh, I would like to sincerely thank you for already having a global understanding for the Artdonnance concept, even though I will develop it further later on. It's important to understand that, just like in a medical care, art therapy must be personalized and adaptable. It is an integrated and holistic form of care. In other words, just a patient leaves a medical consultation with a medication prescription to relieve physical symptoms. They can also leave with an artistic prescription to address the pain of the soul and emotion one by one. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Merci
Thank you
beaucoup.
so much. Thank you, Dr. Nasia.
Thank
And your
you.
steering has showed us how art can become an outline of pain, for pain that can be spoken, and how invisible family wounds can be seen, held, and transformed. Thank you as well to every participant online. Thank you for your listening, your focus, and your presence.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So today we just have journeyed together from the invisible to the visible. And Linda's story tells us invisible scars of the image. Yeah. Linda do not have to remain silent forever. They can be renamed, held, and transformed through color and symbol. Let me also share a preview. In June, IAETDAA will also focus on the theme of child healthcare awareness month, and also the Dr. Nursia will share with us about the cases, maybe it's for the children's, yes, for the kids cases about the,
Yes.
yes, it's with cancer, right? The child with cancers, yeah, how to care about or use via the Artdonnance way. Dr. Nursia will share her valuable art therapy project at hospital in the Argelia, putting colors on pain, art therapy, and emotional accompaniment for the children with cancer. Please stay tuned for the further announcements from our association. Yeah. Thank you again
Thank
to
you.
Dr. Nursia and for his sincerely sharing and professional guidance. And thank you to every participant for your companionship and trust. Some wounds need to be seen. Some healing can be happen through the art. And may we all find your own inner peace and strength through the art and companionship. And this concludes today's events. Wishing peace in your lives and see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Ananda. Merci de m'avoir permis de m'exprimer. Merci à tous les participants d'avoir participé avec patience. Et je partagerai vraiment ultérieurement tout avec vous. J'enverrai à Ananda toute la chronologie de ce cas parmi tant d'autres, en espérant bien sûr que le concept Artdonnance puisse être adaptable à toute personne. Si on peut faire apporter du bien, apporter un plus à la douleur du corps et de l'esprit et soulager l'âme, pourquoi pas. Euh, euh, voilà. Euh, Thank you. Thank you very much to Ananda. Thank you for allowing me to express myself. Thank you to all the participants for their patience, and I will truly share everything with you later on. I will send Ananda the full chronology of this case, among many others, in the hope that the Artdonnance concept can be adaptable to everyone. If we can bring well-being, add something positive to the pain of the body and mind, I relieve the soul, why not? Thank you very much.